8GB GPUs aren't dead, but they are not as safe as they were 2 years ago. And if you are buying a graphics card in 2026, that single number might decide whether your system feels fine for the next 3 years or start struggling much earlier. Because this isn't just about the performance today, it's about the headroom. So let's break down both sides of this 8GB mess properly. Now let's head on with the positive side, why 8GB is still fine. First, resolution matters. Even in 2026, most gamers are still on 1080p, not 4K and not even 1440p in many cases. At 1080p, VRAM issue is significantly lower compared to higher resolutions. And second thing, upscaling options like DLSS and FSR helps quite a lot in this type of scenarios. Especially if you play competitive games or older multiplayer or story games, which don't push VRAM as much. Even today, those lighter titles seem to do fine on 8GB and will keep your gaming experience smooth for upcoming years as well. But now, finally market reality. Budget GPUs still ship with 8GB VRAM and developers can't completely ignore this segment, especially when top 2 companies out of total 3 are giving 8GB in their current gen GPUs. 8GB is not completely obsolete yet, but 1080p gaming with medium to high settings, 8GB can still deliver a smooth experience for next 3-4 years. That's the positive side. Now let's flip the coin and head to the negatives. And the main question here isn't does 8GB work today? It's how long will it stay comfortable? Modern AAA games are steadily increasing their VRAM usage, higher resolution textures, more detailed environments, more ray tracing effects and larger open worlds. And the biggest villain, lot of unoptimization. Let's be real, in 2026, 1440p is the new norm and several recent titles already exceed 8GB on high settings at 1440p resolution. And when VRAM runs out, the issue isn't just the lower average FPS, it's stuttering, frame time spikes, terrible 1% lows and texture glitches. That's exactly what makes 8GB kind of meh in 2026. See, it's not always about higher frame rates, it's about experience. And PC optimization trends haven't exactly been improving each passing year. Games are just getting less and less optimized every new generation. Today at 1080p high to ultra setting, most titles stay around 7 to 8GB range. And at 1440p high setting, several modern games exceed 10GB VRAM usage easily. And once that ceiling is crossed, performance decline is gonna be there. Well, but now that being said, let's take a projection of how 8GB graphic card would look like in next 2-3 years. First, by 2027 or at max 2028, more games will adapt ray tracing by default just like Indiana Jones. Texture quality will obviously continue to increase, which will further increase the VRAM load. So just 2 years down the line, your 8GB graphics card most likely won't be able to handle even 1080p high setting gaming. You will either have to lower your textures or just overall setting to medium to get a stable smooth 60fps experience, or maybe turn on DLSS even at 1080p, which I don't really prefer unless you are on a 15-16 inch laptop screen or maybe even a 22-inch monitor. DLSS quality will just look fine on that. But if you are like me, you like bigger monitors, then 1080p on a 27-inch monitor will probably look very bad, and I honestly won't prefer that. I'll just stick to 1080p and maybe even 1080p DLSS at max 24-inch size monitor. But well, there's one more scenario, and that is if you are not really going to game at least 3-4 days a week, then honestly spending extra might not be that great of an option. So if you are someone who's busy but still wants a PC for the love of game, then yes, a 8GB current gen or in fact a previous gen makes more sense for you, as you won't probably notice the difference between native 1080p and DLSS quality. Also, it's not because you are dumb or something, it's just that few things can only be understood by experiencing them for a period of time. But if you are just gaming like 4-5 hours a week, you will most likely won't get sharp enough to realize the marginal difference between native and DLSS quality. But well, this concludes who can still buy a 8GB VRAM GPU. But now moving on, who shouldn't buy. First, those people who already have a PC. Like even if you have a PC with 1650, 1660 or maybe even a 20 series card, you probably won't feel the upgrade. As with your older system, you were on 1080p, and with your new system, you'll still stay on 1080p, just with better visuals or frame rate, as you can't get both from a GPU like 5060. So your upgrade really won't feel like an upgrade. That's why you should at least consider a 16GB 5060 Ti. Obviously not the 8GB one, to make sure you are not bottlenecked by VRAM and can game at 1440p with decent high frame rates, which would generally feel like an upgrade. And next scenario would be you are someone like me. I'm a student and usually quite busy, so I can't game 3-4 days a week. But as I have played so much on my RX 5500, which is equivalent to a 1650, that's why I can tell the difference between FSR and no FSR. And on top of that, I'm a curious guy. I try every game and software for 1-2 hours and then move on. I don't really complete games, but still I love to try every game with the best experience possible, which is why I need a decently powered PC or maybe a laptop. And yeah, I occasionally make videos as well, so it's kind of justified. Remember, you don't really need to throw money on these companies, just buy what you need. If you are upgrading, yes, definitely go with a good GPU, but if it's your first time, honestly save some money, especially when this RAM crisis is going on. Maybe in normal scenario, I would recommend even non-serious gamers to buy a 5060 Ti, but now that is not really a great option, especially when you have to spend $500 on just 16 gigs of RAM. VRAM. Anyways, if you are a first time builder, just get a previous gen GPU and then 3-4 years later, if you feel like upgrading, do that. But for now, I'll wrap up this video and we'll see you in next one. Till then, sayonara.